Today on Keep Classical Weird, by pure happenstance, I reconnect with an old classmate and fellow chamber musician after 15 years.
You know, I think the next level of reunion should be our quintet getting together and
I love
replaying.
I love that idea.
You know how the actors from Friends got together after 20 years? We should do
This
the
would be the
exact same thing.
exact same thing.
Yeah, except more
Yes.
stardom.
Welcome, friends, to episode 39 of Keep Classical Weird. I am your host, Casey Bozell, and today we're diving into the world of classical guitar with my incredible guest, Adam Levin. Adam and I attended Northwestern together, and we were assigned to be in the same string quintet. I entered knowing very little about the classical guitar, and Adam taught all of us quite a bit. Now, 15 years later, he's here to teach us even more. Here's my interview with Adam Levin. Enjoy.
You and I met in Chicago,
Absolutely,
playing in a string quintet together.
That's right. This is sort of like a homecoming for both of us, a reunion. And for all intents and purposes, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
we were placed in a chamber music group together where we learned the Mario Castelnuovo Tedesco, quintet. Yeah, an amazing piece for guitar and string quartet. I mean, I was just starstruck by the piece and working with you guys. It was just fun. We just had like the goofiest time together. I think we were just like all very open-minded, didn't know what the heck we were getting ourselves into. And it was just fun. I just remember we had such a good time together.
Yeah, that's how I remember it too. We were just kind of dove headfirst into like, okay, there's this piece. All right. It's nice, those low risk days of like, let's try this.
Exactly.
When did you pick up the classical guitar? What was your starting story?
Oh gosh. My musical story starts before the guitar. I actually started on the piano, which is a great instrument, sort of an entry point to the music world, because physically you can see all the keys, and there's just you don't need as much peripheral vision as you need for the guitar, so to speak. I mean, of course, the piano gets infinitely more difficult, and maybe even more difficult than the guitar, but the guitar is such a quirky instrument. You've got to be looking at the music. You've got to know where to place your right hand, which strings to pluck, and then which fingers to push in your left hand, and then it's just a constant freak out session. Like what do I focus and when and where? So I started piano. It's Suzuki piano, which was great. I was playing tons of rep, all by rote, and it was fantastic. And then my dad, who was an amateur classical guitarist, sort of just handed me a classical guitar and was like, "We're gonna do this."
Really?
Yeah, and it wasn't rock and roll first. It wasn't jazz. It wasn't hard metal or anything. It was classical guitar, and he was very assiduous in his teaching methods with me. I mean, so much so that as I progressed on the guitar, he's like, "Well, why don't you get up at 5 a.m. and practice a little bit?" I'm like, okay, let's be exhausted all the time and not be able to stay awake during school.
was that him like pushing forward his like, did he see that much talent in you and he just wanted to kind of like push you into it a little bit more?
He loves, I mean, my dad and I, we're very close, and the guitar is a piece that draws us together. It's sort of the glue in many respects in our relationship, and I think it was something he loved so much and something he wanted to pass along to his kids. And he also, I think in his profession, he's a professional psychologist, and his work style is maniacal. He's always been somebody who works he's very steadfast in his style, and it takes everything from A to Z, and is just very detail oriented, and perseveres, and he wanted to imbue that kind of work ethic in his kids. And it worked with me, and to some extent my sister, but it's not for the faint of heart. It can be tough.
Sounds like it.
You as a kid, it's a beautiful thing playing music. It's transformational in so many, but it's also extraordinarily like psychological, and getting up early. You have you have to psychologically dedicate yourself to music at those hours, and it can be tiring as well as gratifying, but it was frustrating. It's it's a it's a wide experience. There's a large spectrum of emotions and psychology that comes with it, and I think that's what's so beautiful about music, is that it expresses happiness, anger, sadness, the blues, total euphoria. And I think and training in music is just like that too. It's not all just like, oh, stars and beauty all the time. It's tough. It's tough work. And
Right.
so yeah, my dad was the spearhead in all of this, and my sister also played classical guitar. She's 4.5 years younger than me, but she was part of this regiment as well, and she played guitar until college, and then sort of departed from it. But it was always, for me, it was funny, and especially at Northwestern where we met, it was a important moment or moments in my career where I had this ambition. It was like, maybe I do want to become a physician, because I did the pre-med stuff at Northwestern, and then I did psychology. I was like, maybe I want to become a psychologist like my father. But I realized that I just couldn't divorce myself from music, and that if I was going to pursue it, it was now. This was the moment to do it. Medicine will always be there. It's like, God forbid, I decide tomorrow that music is not for me. I could still go back to medical school and pursue that field, but it does not work in the reverse with music.
Right.
Like, there is a critical time that you have to develop your art and your aesthetic and your identity, and that's it. I mean, so yeah, it started with my dad, and then it sort of took off in high school when I did some summer music. There was the Cherub music program at Northwestern University, which was a summer program that they had for many years.
Oh.
Really great. It was sort of my first experience where I realized, oh, there's other people out in the world that are doing similar things, who are also working their tail off, love music, love performing, love sharing it with people, and are talented and have something to share with the world. So that was cool, and that sort of reinforced my love for the guitar. And then in college, when we met, it was high powered, lots of stuff going on with the psychology and the pre-med and the classical guitar performance, and it was a moment where I could have gone in any one of the directions and been happy, but I had a calling. It was sort of like an epiphany of sorts when I realized that music was it was begging me to go down that path, and that was that.
Do you remember a specific moment when you were like, oh, well, this is clearly where I have to go?
Well, yeah, I do remember one of the moments in high school when I was at NISHME, this Cherub music program at Northwestern University in the summer. And I remember giving a performance, and I was playing Villalobos Etude 12 and number 7. And really, they're staples in the guitar repertoire. Heitor Villa-Lobos was a Brazilian composer, wrote some fabulous pieces, 12 etudes, 5 preludes, and some a suite of Brazilian music as well. And I remember playing, and they're difficult pieces, and I remember playing it and commanding it, and it was the first time that my performance had elicited a strong response by the audience. They just roared, and I was like, "Whoa! I didn't know this was possible." You know, it's like
Right.
it was the first time where it was like a means to an end, but I didn't realize what the end was going to be. It was just like, well, I'm just going to get up and play and go back to practicing, which was it's funny because as a kid I also did karate, and I always remember that my sensei would tell us, win, lose, or draw, you go back to your studies and you just keep at it. And it was sort of like, and to me, the performance at Nishmi was just that. It's like win, lose, or draw. It was just another day at work. It was, but it was nice. I think it was a turning point when I realized like, oh, there's something special here. This I'm eliciting a response. Whether it's good or bad or anything is something else. But it was cool to see that, and it was sort of a shock and a moment of epiphany. So I think that sort of led to other things in college and beyond. Yeah, live performance, I just love it. The whole thing, the preparation. Just, I mean, it's a little sadomasochistic in some ways because you want so badly to feel the pain of like, it's not even pain, but it's like the euphoria, the pain, the whole compass of human emotion in 90 minutes. And it's such a thrill. The butterflies, the getting on stage, seeing the audience, seeing the response, and responding to their response. It's very symbiotic. And it's, that's I think why live performance is so sorely missed in this desolate time in history with the pandemic. Artists are not meant for isolation. We are only in part we're meant for isolation in our studies. That's fine, but performers and people who present their artwork are meant to share. That's just, it's basic. This music was not made in a vacuum, and it deserves to be shared in organic environments, and it's something that inspires me. And the thing is, like with live performance, it's so cool when things work out well. It's so cool when they don't work out well. It's so cool when it's in between. It's the spontaneous, erratic nature of music that's such a turn on to me. It's not for everybody. I mean, that it can be soul crushing. It can be ego bursting if things don't work exactly as planned. But to me, all the summation of all the possibilities is what drives me each and every time.
I would love to touch on that for a second. That's fantastic. And I'm in total agreement with you. I think one of the misconceptions about classical music in general, and you might get this more as a guitarist, because classical guitar in terms of like guitar genres is probably not like as well known as rock or as jazz or
Absolutely.
as, and I heard one time, I don't remember who it was that was saying that they prefer jazz music because the only way you can surprise yourself in classical music is if you make a mistake.
I think there are prescribed ways of playing classical music, and there's performance practiced, stylistic ways of playing the music from the Renaissance, Baroque, classical, romantic, etc. But there are spontaneous liberties that one takes to individualize a performance or an interpretation. Like, for example, let's take the music of Astor Piazzolla, the king of tango music from Argentina. When you look at one of his scores, it's literally just it's a blob of black on a piece of paper that really, if you just play it as is, doesn't mean anything. It was an approximation of an improvisatory spirit that he was trying to create with his bands. I mean, he was forced to do it because he wanted others to play his music. So I think when playing his music, yeah, it's stylized classical music, because you can't really dance to Astor Piazzolla music for the most part. But I think what you want to do is you want to study the performance, like how he performed it, how he was on stage with the musicians around him, and try to imitate not only the guitar but the other instruments as well on your instrument. Like, and the guitar is such a perfect vehicle for doing that, because it's such a colorful, timbrically rich instrument. I mean, Segovia described it as a small orchestra, and if you don't treat it like that, you might as well just listen to a MIDI file. And that you have to be. I think it can be very boring. Classical music can be dreadfully boring and unimaginative, but the onus is on the performer. If it's boring, it's the performer's fault. We are the conduit between what's on the score and what the audience listens to. And if we don't do a convincing job, then that's our problem. We have not transmitted correctly to the audience, and it's really tough. I mean, and I don't purport that I always do that and effectively. Sometimes I do it better than other times, but classical music. Number one, specifically in the classical guitar world, it's a little bit of a misnomer. So you have electric guitar or rock and roll. You play on this solid body instrument with steel strings, and you use a pick. That's electric guitar, and you plug it into an amplifier, and you do some. You can have crazy effects with pedals and this and that. It's an amazing world. It's totally virtuosic and spontaneous, like any of the other styles of guitar. Then you have acoustic guitar, which is a instrument with multiple woods, like the classical guitar. It's a hollow body, so it has maybe spruce on the top and mahogany or some rosewood on the back and sides, and steel strings. Again, using a pick, or there are fingerstyle guitars who either slip on picks on their fingertips,
right,
or they will use their actual fingernails, like classical guitars. And then you get classical guitars. We are sort of the runts of the mix, yeah. and we use our nails. And for those of you who aren't familiar with classical guitars, if you ever go walking down the street and you see somebody with long fingernails on their right hand and not their left hand, they're probably classical guitars, not drug dealers. Hopefully not both.
Right.
So, and the shape of your nails on your right hand dictates the sound you are able to produce, whether it's warm or more metallic. And some people have longer nails, shorter nails. It's very idiosyncratic. Every person has their personal shape that works best.
Okay.
For them.
Wait. You're talking about like how you actually groom your nails, or genetically?
Well, some people have genetically better nails, so they don't have to use reinforcements.
Okay.
I was not blessed with genetically perfect nails. So I use acrylic, which is a white powdery substance that you use in combination with glue, and then you use sandpaper to file it down and make it super smooth. There's no grooves, because any grooves in your nails will negatively impact the sound and tone production, and that makes or break. I mean, the poetry of the guitar comes from your right hand.
Oh, I
And
didn't realize that was so. I mean, it sounds like somebody talking about making reeds or something, like how deliberate you have to be there.
totally, it's very deliberate, and the shape, the attack or articulation of the string, that affects everything. I mean, it can be you and the thing is, this we were talking about this earlier about the colors on the guitar. So if you move your fingernail and pluck closer to the bridge, you will get a very metallic sound, almost imitating a trumpet. And then if you shift your hand closer to or over the neck, you'll get a sound that imitates a clarinet or a bass or a cello. So there's this again. You can imitate so many instruments from the orchestra, and that's what makes it really kind of compelling and interesting and fun. I mean, that's where the imagination comes. So going back to Piazzolla, you can orchestrate a solo guitar piece or even a chamber music piece by Piazzolla and really make it come to life, make it dynamic. That's so important. I mean, the last thing we need is another interpretation of a solo Piazzolla piece that's just, straight, strict, and unimaginative.
Mm-hmm.
We need imagination with the improvisatory spirit. You have to transport the listener to the dance floor or the cafe or wherever it is that the music takes place. I mean, that's what's so beautiful is that you are allowing the audience to travel without leaving their seat.
So, okay, you finish up your bachelor's at Northwestern, and then
Yep.
what happened next?
So I went to New England Conservatory to complete my master's with Elliot Fisk, who I also was studying with in undergrad privately.
Oh,
When I was applying for undergrad, I had also applied to the 5-year double degree program at Tufts with New England Conservatory, but ended up going to Northwestern because it was a better fit. But I couldn't help myself. I wrote Elliot, and I said, "Is there any way I can like study with you anyway?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course, come on out here." So I would go for these like long weekends, and his wife Saira was so hospitable, always welcoming me into their home. And Elliot is just such a giving person, and we would have. I mean, he's this powerhouse virtuoso Renaissance man. I mean, just a beautiful person. And so we would have these unbelievable weekends. I would go in on a Friday, have a lesson, have another lesson on Saturday, then another lesson Sunday, and then go home back to Chicago. And
wow.
and so that formalized in my going to New England Conservatory for my master's degree and studying with him, and that was fantastic. And it was a beautiful time for a number of reasons. One, it cemented my love for engaging the community through the classical guitar and how important it is to empower the community through your music. And that
Mm.
it's not just about serving the ivory tower and these fancy performance venues, but it's also about empowering and serving those who are right next to you and who may not be as fortunate or have not had the fortune to have music in their lives at all entry points at the young stages of your life up until the last stages of your life, and that was really important for me, and it was a humbling experience. I created a number of projects. I was an Albert Schweitzer Fellow, which was a beautiful program that allows you to design a community program of any sort and this is not a music oriented program. This was for lawyers, physicians, whomever. And I happened to be one of the musicians as part of the fellowship, and I designed this program where I would teach guitar at a failing Boston high school or turnaround school. I don't think they like to identify as failing, but it's
sure.
Yeah.
Fair.
And then I also created a program for geriatric rehabilitation home and worked with older generation who had different acuities of dementia. So I did that, and that was really great. And then after I graduated, I went to Spain for 3 years, and that was centered around new Spanish music. And growing up, where we're hit from all sides with the music of Spain, being a guitarist. Manuel de Falla, Rodrigo, Albéniz, Granados, you name it, boom. It's part of our Targa. It's part of our upbringing. But in my mind, I was like, well, those are amazing composers, and they produce amazing work. But what's next? Where do we go from here? And that really, in some ways, catapulted me to the next level in my career, and sort of contributing to the status of the guitar, and also contributing to the repertoire. It's I think it's our responsibility to keep the torch lit, and what that means in one part is commissioning new works, supporting living composers to write pieces for the solo guitar, for chamber music combinations that include the guitar, and that will propel the instrument forward.
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but what contemporary classical guitar composers should we be checking out?
Well, I'm going to mention many of them, but
yeah,
one in particular is very relevant to your neck of the woods. Salvador Brotons is the conductor of the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, which is the orchestra I just played with last weekend. He is not only an amazing, he's originally a flutist. He is an incredible conductor and an extraordinary composer. And he has written for the solo classical guitar since 1979. In fact, his first piece for guitar is called Two Suggestions. And I first became acquainted with this piece through my teacher in Spain, Gabriel Estareas, and I just fell in love with it. It was such an enchanting work, very difficult, but fabulous music. So I was in touch with Brotons. He invited me to come to Barcelona to meet, play for him, and have a couple meals, which was really fun.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll never forget this. I arrived at his apartment, and he's like, before we get down to business, we got to go eat. And I remember we had a meal together, and I remember specifically the dessert. It was 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream, and then on top was this chocolate that was hardened on top. It was the most delicious dessert I was so satisfied afterwards that afterwards, playing music was such a natural. I was just I am ready to go. Let's do this. So we immediately hit it off, and he enjoyed my playing, and I asked him, I was like, wow, you got to write me a piece. And he's like, okay, fine, yeah. So he found some time in his schedule, and he's like, what do you want me to write? Well, I loved your first piece, he's got many pieces that are fabulous, but I love his 2 suggestions. So he's like, all right, I'll write you 2 new suggestions. So he wrote these fabulous, the sequel to 2 suggestions called 2 New Suggestions. and that was just a big hit on my first 21st century Spanish guitar album for Naxos. And then on the very last album that I'll be releasing this year, on the fourth volume, there'll be another work by him called Sonata Sefardita, which will be based on Sephardic melodies from Spain. So Sephardic cultures, I'm Jewish, and the Sephardic Jewish culture in Spain is extraordinarily interesting, and it representative of sort of the intersection of many cultures in Spain in the 14th and 15th centuries, and it's really, they're beautiful. So he chose several melodies from this period of time and sort of infused it with his magic compositional sparkle.
So if people want to find more about you and these projects that you're doing, is there somewhere that they can go?
Totally. So I have a website. It's adamlevinguitar.com. I also, my Duo Sonidos' website, which is my violin and guitar chamber music group, is duosonidos.com. And if you want to find out about my trio, it's thegreatnecks.com. Or if you're interested in finding out more about Kithara Project, the nonprofit that I co-founded, it's kitharaproject.org, which is KITHARA project.org. And yeah, and you can find me on Facebook. You can also, I host an annual guitar festival at the University of Rhode Island. So check that out if you're into guitar. Every year we have a huge bonanza of just so much guitar, so much everything. It's just, your mind will just explode with notes and guitar strings and God knows what else.
And that's our show for today. My deepest thanks to Adam Levin for his participation. We kept talking for quite a while after what you just heard, and that's available as a bonus episode on patreon.com/keepclassicalweird. Our theme music is by Not Dead composer Thomas Barber. Check out his stuff at thomasbarber.com. Web development support is provided by Tina at citybeautifuldesign.com. Keep Classical Weird is created and edited by me, Casey Bozell. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Stay safe and stay weird.